The Caregiver. My name is Taoki Nakoyama. I work as a caregiver in a Japanese hospital where elderly people are cared for. Recently, I have been working as a caregiver for 5 years. I like this job and it gives me great pleasure. There are also 2 people working in my department. Usagi Yamanaka is our secretary who manages the affairs of patients. She usually sits late every day, and Sashimi Katagawa is my best friend with whom I studied at university. We also got a job here together and are now working for the benefit of the elder generation. One day I was about to go home late in the evening. I noticed that Sashimi suddenly fell asleep at the table in our hospital dining room. I thought to myself that I would not wake her up since she had a hard day today. You never know what could have happened. She needs to wake up herself. I hope that she won't stay here overnight and will get up on time. When I was about to leave, Usagi suddenly called me to talk about a patient who is being treated at home and whose case am I running. As it turned out, Usagi hasn't been able to contact the patient's family for the 2nd day. Then the phone is constantly busy. Then the connection is cut off when you try to call. It was already late in the evening. The clock was 23 hours and 20 minutes in the evening. Before getting ready to go home, Usagi asks me to go to them and check on Mr. Momoko, my patient, who usually sits in our hospital, but for personal reasons, he wanted to stay at home for a while. I take my coat, say goodbye to Usagi, and leave the hospital. It's already very dark outside and small lanterns illuminate my path. It so happened that Mr. Momoko's house is located in the very corner of the block. His house is surrounded by a high stone fence and large trees. Everything is very hard to see at night, so I take a flashlight with me in case I have to go to the patient. The house of Mr. Momoko's family looked like a typical Japanese house, 2-storied, the entire interior of which consisted of thin wooden doors that also played the role of sliding doors. And so I walk out to the house and knock on the door. Then I ask, "Is anyone home, Mr. Momoko?" When I didn't hear an answer, I decided to go inside and check if everything was in order. I went into the house. The lights were practically turned off everywhere. Only a few rooms had a light bulb turned on in the distance. I thought that Mr. Momoko was at home, and he was just somewhere in the distance, so he didn't hear me knocking. I carefully walked along the corridor that led to the kitchen and the bedroom of Mr. Momoko's granddaughter. Then I looked around and realized that Mr. Momoko wasn't in the living room, where he usually sits in the evenings with his family, and I couldn't find the family itself. Where did they all go? I decided to inspect the house and went to the place where the light bulb was burning. I grabbed the door handle and realized that the door is locked, and I cannot open it. It seems strange to me, but for some reason I didn't knock on it. Apparently something told me that this should not be done yet. I decided to look around the house again and decided to open the wooden doors that led to another room. There was a hearth for cooking traditional Japanese food. It was pitch dark and I couldn't see anything. I went out and decided to look around in the backyard again. I come there and see through the window that Mr. Momoko appeared in the living room and is sitting in a wheelchair. I was scared and decided that something had happened to him. I ran to him and he was sitting on a wheelchair in the living room, although he wasn't there before. I'm sure of it. He was looking out the window. It looked out on a dark, unlit courtyard, so I couldn't understand what he was looking at so intently. Approaching him, I saw in his eyes an empty look directed in that direction. I asked him, Mr. Momoko, hello. You scared me. Don't do that again, okay? Mr. Momoko didn't answer my question. I decided to clarify again. Mr. Momoko, how are you feeling? I tried to contact your family, but to no avail. Do you know where they might be? Mr. Momoko again remained silent and didn't say a word. He continued to stare at one point without taking his eyes off, as if I wasn't there. Suddenly he peed himself, and I had to find a towel to wipe the floor. I decided that Mr. Momoko needed some time to recover, and I decided not to bother him. Suddenly, I decided to go back to that closed door and try to open it again. It was still closed. Maybe someone from the other side had closed it. I decided to go out into the yard and look around, but I took a towel with me by mistake. I came back and left it. I decided to check on Mr. Momoko again, but he wasn't there. I panicked and started looking for him all over the house. I went to that floor again, and to my surprise, it was open. Did Momoko-san manage to open it after walking around the room a little? I came across a TV, a staircase to the second floor. I climbed it and found several more rooms with doors. One of them looked very strange. I went up to it and tried to open it, and something suddenly began to appear from the shadows. It was some kind of monster, like a 2-meter bird. I was amazed and couldn't move. After that, darkness. For Taoki, darkness and uncertainty came. The further development of events remains unknown. The next day, Sashimi Katagawa. So the day passed in the hospital, and Taoki wasn't there today. I wonder what happened. Usagi informs that it is necessary to visit Mr. Momoko's house again in order to continue custody of him. I ask Usagi what happened to her. She says she can't take care of Momoko-san anymore because she gets tired from time to time. She's not young anymore, you know. She needs rest sometimes. Usagi says that I will succeed. I took Momoko-san's medical history and studied it. Everything became clear to me, and I went to his house. Taoki once told me how to get to him, so I found his house without much difficulty. I knocked on the door, but no one answered. I went inside and heard a whistling kettle in the kitchen and running water from the tap. I turned off the kettle and water. After I went to the living room, Taoki once said that Momoko-san likes to spend her free time here with her family, but he wasn't there. I decided to check the next room, and yes, he was there, which slightly scared me. I greeted him, but Momoko-san didn't respond or react to my words. Now I will deal with you. I left Momoko-san and decided to look around. There was some strange white noise coming from the far room. I decided to check, and it turned out that it was a TV turned on at full volume. It turned it off. Suddenly, a few seconds later, a bird flew into the window that overlooked the courtyard and fatally struck, leaving a trail of blood on the glass. I dropped everything and ran to the backyard to check on her. It turned out that it was a black raven. It's so very strange, I thought. After that, I turned to the house. Momoko-san was still in his place, not moving once. I decided to wash Momoko-san and open the bathroom, but something prevented me from opening the door from the outside. I noticed that there was some kind of piece of wood. I went to the back of the house and managed to move it through the window with the help of a hoe that was lying in the backyard. As soon as I removed the board, something scary and frightening flashed before my eyes along with Momoko-san. Something took him rolling in the other direction. I carefully went back, but I didn't find Momoko-san at home. I checked the backyard. Really, he was there. I still didn't understand what I saw, so I didn't attach so much importance to it. I brought Momoko-san into the house and washed him in the bathroom that I had prepared for him. After a while, the postman knocked on our door. He left the package and took it to the kitchen. After that, I helped Momoko-san get out of the tub and dry off. Then I put him to sleep in the nearest room. Suddenly, I started to feel dizzy, and I slowly began to lose consciousness. What happened next? Everything is in a fog. I woke up the next day and went back to work. The next day, Sashimi Katagawa. I met Usagi and told her about this family. I shared my concerns with her and complained that there was definitely something wrong with him. None of the family members were at home, and I'm not comfortable with how Momoko-san is behaving. I really wanted to know if Taoki could tell me something about it. Usagi says yes. It would be great if you would visit her. She lives near the hospital. I got out and went to your house along a dark street, which was illuminated by a single traffic light. As I approached your house, I noticed some guy standing in my way. I asked her to move away, to which he said, "Hey, stay where you are. What do you want?" I asked him to step back. I said I don't live here and I just wanted to visit my friend. He says, "I'll let you if you play rock, paper, scissors with me." I thought to myself, is he crazy? After 3 rounds, I managed to win. Suddenly he said, "Did you really think I would let you through just like that?" I was at loss. "You deceived me. Calm down. Just bring me what you keep in your hospital. I need drugs." "You're crazy. What drugs?" "Shut up. Bring me the drugs or I won't let you go any further." As a result, I had to go back and find a package of medicines in my glove compartment, which contained narcotic substances in small doses, intended for the treatment of patients. I took the ampoule and went back to him. He said, "Yes, this is what you need. Now you can go through." I was finally able to get through and go up to the 2nd floor, where Taoki lives. Her apartment was in the corner of the corridor. I had the key to her apartment in case I wanted to visit her. She trusts me as her best friend and allows me to visit her at any time. I opened the door and found the lights turned off everywhere. I turned on the light and found Taoki sitting on the bed. Her gaze was fixed on the floor. She was shaking her head and was silent all the time. And finally I asked her, "Taoki, hello, how are you feeling?" I'm holding on for now." I made her a tea and gave it to her. "Here is some tea. Have a drink." "Thank you." "Taoki, I have a question for you." "Sashimi, what is the question?" "I'm taking care of Mr. Momoko now. Yesterday I was at his house. I didn't find any of his relatives. There is definitely something wrong with him. Could you tell me if you noticed anything unusual?" "Why?" "What? Why? Go away, I don't want anything to do with this." "Taoki, I'm sorry, I just wanted to understand what was going on. Everything was so strange." "Go away!" "Is there anything I can do to help?" Sashimi no longer answered my questions. I decided to leave here and go to work. After leaving the apartment and walking a few meters, I heard a woman scream. It was Taoki. She opened the door and jumped down to the ground with screams. I was in a huge shock. She died on the spot. God, what's going on? next day. I'm shocked. I'm in such a shock that words cannot convey. I was in a dining room where I once fell asleep so much after duty. I heard Taoki trying to wake me up, but she was afraid to stop me. She was the best gift of my life for me, my best friend. She's gone now. I can't believe it. Usagi understood my pain and desired to understand this problem. She said to me, "Sashimi, I know you're in pain. Go home and rest. You need to come to your senses." I listened to Usagi and got ready, but I had slightly different plans. I decided to go back to Momoko-san and finally sort things out, in memory of my best friend. I went to his house and went inside. As always, no one was there. I looked around and found a flashlight in the living room. I decided to take it. I looked around the house on the ground floor, but I didn't find anything remarkable. Mr. Momoko himself was also not in place. I decided to go up the stairs, and on the second floor I found a strange room with broken doors that I couldn't open to get there. I decided to look through the crack and take a closer look. I saw practically nothing. I had to use force, with difficulty, but I managed to open the doors and get inside. Going into it, I saw some very strange closet, girded with a strange red hoop. It was closed, but on the floor I found a note with a very strange content. "The whole truth lies underground." I couldn't figure out what this means and wandered around the house for 2 hours in search of at least some clue, until I noticed a very strange floor covering in one of the rooms of the house. It was next to the stairs. I decided to check, and it turned out that there was a very strange hatch under the floor all this time. I had no idea that Momoko-san's family had a basement with a deep staircase. I was scared, but I dared and went down. The basement looked like some kind of cave with a bunch of turns and incomprehensible corridors. Very strange. I felt cold and anxious. I turned on the flashlight and started walking through the corridors until I came across a strange altar with a log in the middle. A masked man was hanging on the log. He was unconscious. I didn't understand what was that, why everything looked like this. Next to it was a note with very frightening information. I was horrified by the content. It said that the mother of the family got stabbed to death in the kitchen at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when she was preparing breakfast for the family. The husband was pushed and he fell down the stairs at 15 o'clock, 30 minutes. The children disappeared and screamed at 16 o'clock in the evening. I was terrified. I didn't understand why it was all here and why I was reading it. All of a sudden, in the distance of the cave, groans began to be heard, as if someone was nearby. I began to breathe intensely and tried to carefully inspect the cave. I walked it carefully with the desire to get out of here as soon as possible. I'm walking down the corridor, and suddenly I see some terrible creature without eyes and with a knife, looking like an old grandmother. It follows me in convulsions, repeating something terrible and inaccurate. I run down the corridor and find the stairs. This grandmother confidently follows me and tries to catch up. I climb the stairs and calm down, thinking that she will not be able to climb. Suddenly, she gets up and hits me on the leg with a knife. I manage to run away from her and understand what I need to do to get rid of her. I run around the house to be constantly with her at a distance. I'm in a panic. But then I realized that during my stay at home, there were clocks scattered around it. As a child, I heard a legend that in order to get rid of evil spirits, it is necessary to put the right time on all the clocks so that the evil will go away. I wasn't sure about it. I was in despair and fear. Grandma was getting faster and I had to run from her all over the house. I ran away as far as possible and hid in the kitchen. She lost me and I was able to gain some time. There was a clock in the kitchen. I remembered the time and indicated the right time of the deal. The clock suddenly rang loudly. I thought I needed to find all the clocks in the house and set the right time in them. But I was hindered by a terrible grandmother hunting me. I tried to go into the next room, but she noticed me and starts running after me faster. My soul literally screamed with fear. I ran to the opposite corner. She kept running and groaning. I surrounded her again. I went into the children's room. There was a clock here too. I set the time and the clock rang again. Thank God, I thought. They were the last hours that I saw at the stairs. I waited for the grandmother until she came closer to me and surrounded her. I quickly ran to the stairs and found the last clock. I changed the time and suddenly felt a sense of loneliness. I didn't trust it and decided to look around carefully. It seems that the grandmother disappeared and I no longer heard strange voices. Having made sure of a calm atmosphere, I decided to go down the stairs again and check who this hanging man was. I took off his mask and was horrified. It was Mr. Momoko. Thank you, Momoko-san said. Oh, you can... Yes, I'm sorry I didn't answer. A curse was placed on me. What's going on at all? Who was this demon chasing me? This is the spirit of a raven demon from the other world. He captured the body of my deceased wife and tried to be reborn using it. You have to help me. But how? Take these scissors, go to the second floor and cut the rope that encircles the closet. Find an urn with my wife's ashes there and take her out of the house. This could scare the spirit away and he will leave. I took the scissors and went upstairs. Nothing prevented me from climbing the stairs and cutting the red rope. I found the urn inside the closet. I took it and left the house. After I took the urn, the figure of the demon, the raven who apparently was guarding it, suddenly began to appear behind my shoulders. Suddenly it went dark in my eyes. I realized that the house had turned into an endless corridor of rooms. I got scared and started running through the corridors. I didn't understand where I was running. It was important for me to run as far away from the demon as possible. I'm running, getting tired and gradually starting to give up because I don't have the strength to fight. I was ready to stop and die when suddenly I see a light at the end to which I'm running. I ran to the end and I found myself on the street outside the house. Apparently, I managed to get out. 6 months later, Momoko-san and I decided to go to the sanctuary to honor the memory of his deceased family. But suddenly I noticed that Momoko-san has black wings like a raven. I don't know if it was a vision or just imagine it. What happened next, I do not know. I quit my job and swore that I would never work as a caregiver again in my life. Now let Usagi handle yourself.